Senior analyst Kim stared at his screen in disbelief. The energy readings couldn't be right. He blinked hard and looked again, but the numbers remained unchanged. "Director Bai," he called out, his voice cracking slightly. "You need to see this." The director, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun, walked over with measured steps. Her expression remained neutral as she studied the display, but her eyes widened slightly, the closest thing to surprise she ever showed. "Run a diagnostic," she ordered. "Already did. Twice." Kim pointed to the trajectory analysis. "It's real." The monitoring station buzzed with quiet efficiency as other analysts continued their routine work, unaware that history was unfolding on Kim's screen. The Galactic Council's central monitoring facility had tracked millions of vessels across thousands of star systems for centuries. Every known species' propulsion signature was cataloged and classified. This one matched none of them. Director Ba tapped her communication band. "Alert levels 3 and 4. Connect me to Chief Counselor Joe." Kim watched the anomaly continue its journey, moving at speeds that violated what he'd been taught was possible. The vessel was small, barely larger than a standard transport shuttle, yet it moved like nothing he'd ever seen. Within minutes, confirmation came from 3 other tracking stations spread across different sectors. The readings were consistent. Something impossible was happening. "It's coming from Sol system," Kim said quietly, pulling up the origin data. "Earth." Director Baz's face hardened. "The humans. Impossible." But the evidence was clear. The trajectory began at the edge of Earth's solar system, accelerated to conventional FTL speeds, and then something else happened. The readings showed the ship briefly vanishing before reappearing at velocities that exceeded standard measurements. The emergency session of the Council was called within the hour. Kim found himself pulled from his monitoring station to present the data directly to the 12 senior representatives of the most advanced civilizations in the known galaxy. The chamber was imposing, a vast circular room with high ceilings and ancient stone columns. Each counselor sat at a station customized for their species' unique physiologies. Chief Counselor Joe, representing the Syrian collective, looked particularly disturbed by the findings. Analyst Kim, his deep voice echoed in the chamber. "Are you certain these readings are accurate?" Kim stood straight, trying to hide his nervousness. "Yes, Chief Counselor." All verification protocols were followed. 4 independent tracking arrays confirmed the signature. Counselor Han, the serpentine representative of the Draconian Alliance, hissed softly. "The humans are barely space-capable by our standards. They achieved FTL travel less than a century ago. This must be a natural phenomenon misidentified as a vessel." "The energy signature matches artificial propulsion patterns," Kim replied, bringing up the detailed analysis on the main display. "It's definitely a ship. A small one." The room erupted in multiple conversations. Some counselors spoke in their native tongues, translation devices struggling to keep up with their agitated speech. "Silence," Chief Counselor Joe commanded. When order was restored, he turned to the human liaison officer who had been hastily summoned to the chamber. "Officer Song, what can you tell us about this vessel?" Song looked pale but composed. I have no information about any test flights or new propulsion systems, counselors. I will need to contact Earth immediately." "You expect us to believe humans have developed technology that outpaces even the Arcturians?" Counselor Han demanded. The Arcturians, with their crystalline bodies, had been the undisputed masters of propulsion theory for millennia. Song met the counselor's gaze steadily. "I cannot explain what I do not understand, Counselor. But I assure you, if this is a human vessel, my government will provide full information." Kim watched the political drama unfold, but his mind kept returning to the raw data. Something profound had happened today. The humans had been granted observer status in the Council out of diplomatic courtesy, not because they were considered significant players in galactic affairs. Their technology was considered rudimentary, their scientific understanding limited. Yet there it was on his screens, a human vessel breaking what everyone thought were the fundamental laws of physics. As the Council debated emergency response measures, Kim noticed a new alert on his pad. The vessel had stopped. Its position placed it just outside the Andromeda Galaxy, a journey that should have taken years, not hours. "Chief Counselor," he interrupted, breaking all protocol. "The vessel has reached Andromeda." The chamber fell silent. Andromeda was 2.5 million light-years from Earth. No known technology could make that journey in the time that had elapsed. "Impossible," whispered Counselor Han. "The humans have been keeping secrets," another counselor accused. Officer Song looked as shocked as everyone else. "This is not possible. We don't have this technology. We couldn't have hidden something like this." But the evidence was undeniable. A small human ship had just rewritten the rules of space travel. Everything the Council thought they knew about humanity's capabilities had been wrong. Kim felt a strange mix of professional awe and personal apprehension. The Galactic Order had functioned on a clear hierarchy of technological achievement for thousands of years. The 12 Council races had enjoyed their position at the top, with the humans barely considered a spacefaring species. That order had just been shattered in a single afternoon. As the Council chamber erupted into chaos once more, Kim quietly backed away from the central platform. History was unfolding, and somehow he had been the first to see it coming. A human starship that had broken not just speed records, but the very foundations of interstellar politics. Captain Lee took a deep breath as she looked at the blue-white glow coming from the ship's core. The light pulsed like a heartbeat, almost alive. She had never seen anything so beautiful or so frightening. "Core temperature stable," reported Engineer Kang from her station. Her fingers moved quickly over the control panel, making tiny adjustments. "Quantum field alignment at 98%. Lee nodded, trying to look calm. Inside, her heart was racing. 15 years of her life had led to this moment. 15 years of being told her ideas were crazy, impossible, dangerous. Now she stood on the bridge of the HSS Pathfinder, the most advanced ship humanity had ever built, preparing to do what no one thought possible. "Status report," she called out, her voice steady. One by one, her crew of 15 responded. Each was brilliant in their own way. Each had been rejected by the scientific community for thinking too far outside accepted theories. Dr. Park's wild ideas about space travel had brought them all together. "Navigation ready," said Officer Jin, the youngest member of the crew at just 26. He had been thrown out of the Space Academy for questioning their outdated teaching methods. Now he controlled the most advanced navigation system ever created. "Life support functioning perfectly," reported Dr. Moon, who had once been laughed out of a conference for suggesting new ways to create sustainable environments in space. Lee looked around at her unusual crew. Some were tapping at screens. Others were checking equipment. All had the same look of nervous excitement in their eyes. The ship hummed around them, vibrating with energy they didn't fully understand. Dr. Park's theories had worked better than anyone expected, but even he couldn't explain exactly why. The drive core used principles that broke conventional physics. It didn't just move through space. It somehow folded space itself. "Communication channels are lighting up," said Communications Officer Yoon, looking worried. "The Galactic Council is demanding explanations. They've detected our movement." Lee wasn't surprised. The Council monitored everything in this part of space. They had probably noticed the strange energy signature the moment they activated the drive. Humans were only observers in the Council, seen as primitive newcomers to space travel. That was about to change. She straightened her uniform and walked to the main communication station. "Put me through to Earth Command," she ordered. The screen flickered to life, showing the Earth Command logo. No video feed. They were now too far away for that. Lee composed a simple text message, coordinates confirmed. Andromeda approach vector established. Permission to proceed. She hit send, knowing it would take 12 minutes for the message to reach Earth. 12 minutes at light speed. Yet the Pathfinder had traveled a distance that should have taken years in just a few hours. While they waited, The bridge was quiet. Everyone knew what was at stake. If they succeeded, humanity would leap forward centuries in technological development. If they failed, they might never make it home. "Do you think they'll let us continue?" asked Officer Jin quietly. Lee looked at the young navigator. "They didn't build this ship to keep it in our backyard." The truth was more complicated. The Pathfinder project had been developed in secret, with funding hidden in other programs. Most of Earth's leadership hadn't believed it would work. They had allowed the project to continue only because these crazy scientists needed somewhere to direct their energy. Now those same leaders faced a decision. The Pathfinder had already broken every speed record in known space. They could order the ship to return home immediately and try to manage the political fallout with the Council, or they could push forward into the unknown. "Message incoming," announced Officer Yoon suddenly. Everyone on the bridge froze. Lee felt her mouth go dry as the text appeared on screen. The message was short: "Make history, Pathfinder." For a moment, no one spoke. Then cheers erupted across the bridge. Lee felt a smile spread across her face despite her efforts to remain professional. "You heard Earth Command," she said, raising her voice above the celebration. "Let's make history." Officer Jin, set course for the Andromeda Galaxy. Dr. Kang, prepare the drive core for second phase activation. As the crew jumped into action, Lee turned back to the holographic display, showing their position in space. They were already farther from Earth than any human had ever traveled. Now they would go millions of light years further. The drive core's blue-white glow intensified. The hum of energy grew louder. On her screen, Lee could see the concerned messages from the Galactic Council multiplying. They were tracking the Pathfinder, but they couldn't understand what they were seeing. "Drive ready," announced Dr. Kang. "Quantum field at 100%. Lee nodded and took her seat in the captain's chair. "All crew, prepare for jump to Andromeda." She placed her hand on the activation panel. The ship's computer counted down from 5. When it reached 0, Lee pressed her palm firmly against the cool surface. The stars outside the viewports stretched into lines of light. The blue-white glow from the core expanded, surrounding the ship in a bubble of pure energy. For a brief moment, reality itself seemed to bend. Then the Pathfinder vanished from known space, carrying 15 humans toward a galaxy no human had ever visited before. And somewhere in the Galactic Council's monitoring station, alarms were going off that no one knew how to silence. Ambassador Choi had never seen the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council in such disorder. The massive room, normally a place of calm discussion and careful diplomacy, had turned into something close to a riot. Species from across the galaxy shouted, gestured, and made noises that the translation devices struggled to process. The Dralaxians, with their 4 arms and scaled skin, pounded their fists on the ancient wooden desks. The crystalline Arcturians vibrated so intensely their bodies created high-pitched sounds that hurt human ears. Even the usually calm Zorans, floating gas-like beings contained in special suits, swirled in agitated patterns. Ambassador Choi stood at the center of it all, a small woman in her 60s wearing a simple blue suit. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her posture was perfect. For 20 years, she had represented Earth in this chamber. For 20 years, she had been treated like a child among adults. "Order," shouted Chief Counselor Joe, his voice amplified by the chamber systems. "We will have order." The noise slowly died down, though angry whispers continued. Ambassador Choi waited patiently, hands folded in front of her. She had prepared for this moment for a long time. "Ambassador Choi," said Counselor Joe, his large eyes narrowed. "You will explain immediately how your species has hidden such technology from the Council. This violates multiple sharing agreements." Choi smiled slightly. "With respect, Chief Counselor, Earth has hidden nothing. The Pathfinder project has been mentioned in 17 separate reports submitted to the Council over the past 5 years." "Impossible," hissed Counselor Han of the Draconian Alliance. "We would have noticed technology that breaks fundamental laws of physics." Ambassador Choi reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. She placed it on the floor in front of her, and a holographic display appeared, showing official council documents with dates and signatures. Report 3427B, submitted 3 years ago, detailed the theoretical framework for quantum spacefolding, she said calmly. Report 4982C, submitted 18 months ago, provided early test results from our laboratory experiments. The council members stared at the floating documents. Many looked confused. Some began searching through their own records. These were all classified as speculative research and filed without review, Choi continued, as were the 37 human proposals submitted over the past decade that contained various elements of what became the Pathfinder drive. The Arcturian overseer floated forward, his crystalline body glowing with blue anger. Humans lack the scientific understanding to develop such technology, he said, his voice like breaking glass. You must have stolen this knowledge from a more advanced race. For the first time, Choi's calm expression faltered. She took a deep breath before responding. Overseer, humanity has endured such dismissive attitudes since we joined this council. Our scientists were mocked when they asked questions. Our engineers were ignored when they suggested new approaches. When Dr. Park published his revolutionary paper on quantum field manipulation, your own science academy called it childish imagination without mathematical merit. The chamber had gone completely quiet. Even the angriest council members were listening now. We did not steal this technology, Choi continued. We simply approached the problem differently. While your civilizations continued to refine technologies thousands of years old, making them marginally better with each generation, our scientists asked why we needed those technologies at all. Dr. Park wondered if space itself could be manipulated rather than simply travel through. This is dangerous thinking, grumbled a representative from one of the elder races. There are reasons we follow established paths of development. Yes, Choi agreed. Safety, predictability, control. But humanity has always been willing to take risks to move forward. She touched her device again, and the holographic display changed to show the Pathfinder in flight, its drive core glowing with blue-white energy. The Pathfinder doesn't force its way through space like conventional drives. It creates a harmony with the quantum fabric of reality. It doesn't fight physics. It dances with it. The Zoran representative floated closer, their gas bodies swirling with curiosity. How many of these vessels does Earth possess? They asked, their synthesized voice low and worried. Just one, Choi answered honestly. The Pathfinder is a prototype. We haven't even fully analyzed how well it works or why some aspects of it work at all. This caused another stir in the chamber. The idea that humans would launch such a vessel without complete understanding seemed reckless to many council species. The chief counselor raised his hand for silence. Ambassador Choi, the council demands immediate access to this technology for safety evaluation. Choi had been waiting for this moment. She smiled, but the expression didn't reach her eyes. Earth would be happy to share this technology with our council partners, she said. Just as we would have been happy to work together on its development, had our previous attempts at collaboration been met with respect rather than dismissal. She let that sink in before continuing. I have been authorized to establish a joint research initiative with representatives from all council races, welcome to participate alongside our scientists. Together, we can explore the potential of this new approach to space travel. The council chamber erupted in voices again, but different this time. Representatives were turning to each other, discussing the implications, the opportunities, the politics of it all. Ambassador Choi remained standing in the center, still outwardly calm. But inside, she felt a deep satisfaction. For the first time since humans joined the galactic community, they were not being talked down to. For the first time, the ancient races of the galaxy were looking at humans not with amusement or pity, but with surprise, concern, and perhaps even a touch of respect. As the discussion continued around her, Choi thought about Captain Lee and the brave crew of the Pathfinder, now farther from home than any humans had ever been. Their journey had changed everything, not just for space travel, but for humanity's place in the galaxy. Dr. Sang looked at the line of aliens waiting outside his small university office and sighed. 6 months ago, no one in the galaxy had wanted to talk to him. Now representatives from 12 advanced civilizations stood patiently in the hallway, waiting for a chance to ask him questions. "You can send in the next one," he called to his assistant. The door opened, and a tall crystalline being glided into the room. The Arcturian scientist was considered a genius among his people, with over 300 years of experience in propulsion theory. Now he came to Earth, to a modest office in Seoul National University, seeking answers from a human who was barely 40 years old. Professor Rakil Sang greeted him, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "Thank you for coming all this way." The Arcturian's body shifted colors, a sign of emotional turmoil in his species. "Dr. Sang, I have reviewed the Pathfinder data 14 times. The results remain impossible." Sang smiled slightly. "Yet the ship sits in orbit above us, having traveled to Andromeda and back. Perhaps impossible is not the right word. My equations say it cannot work," Rakil insisted. His voice sounded like tinkling glass. "The energy requirements alone would tear the vessel apart." "That would be true if the ship were fighting against space-time," Sang agreed. He stood up and walked to the small whiteboard on his wall. But that is where Dr. Park's genius changed everything. He began to draw simple diagrams. For thousands of years, advanced races have approached space travel as a problem to overcome. You build increasingly powerful engines to push against the limitations of physics. Each generation of your drives becomes more complex, more powerful, requiring more energy. Rakil's crystalline form pulsed with blue light, indicating agreement. Dr. Park asked a different question. Sang continued. "Instead of asking how to fight against the rules of the universe, he asked how we might work with them." He drew a wave pattern on the board. "Consider a surfer on Earth's oceans. The surfer does not fight the wave. They do not try to stop it or change its direction. Instead, they harmonize with it, using its own energy to move." "Space is not water," Rakil objected. "No, but the quantum fabric of reality has rhythms and patterns just like waves," Sang explained. "The Pathfinder doesn't push against space, it dances with it." He erased the board and drew new diagrams showing the basic principles of the Pathfinder drive. "We use quantum entanglement to create a connection between the ship and its destination. Then, rather than forcing our way through space, we simply align ourselves with the natural flow of the universe." Rakil studied the diagrams, his body cycling through colors of confusion and disbelief. "This is inelegantly simplistic." Sang laughed. "Yes, that's what the Arcturian Science Academy called Dr. Park's original papers. Too simple to work, but sometimes simple is better. Our civilizations have spent millennia developing drive technologies," Rakil said, a note of defensiveness in his voice. "The finest minds across 12 species have built upon each other's work." "And perhaps that was the problem," Sang suggested gently. "You were all following the same path, refining the same approach. No one stepped back to consider a completely different way." Outside the window of Sang's office, students walked across the university campus. Young humans laughed and talked, carrying books and drinks, unaware that their species had just revolutionized galactic travel. How did Dr. Park conceive of this approach? Rakil asked. "What made humans see what we could not?" Sang considered the question carefully. "Perhaps because we are young. We haven't had thousands of years to become set in our ways of thinking. Or perhaps because humans have always been dreamers. Our history is full of people who refuse to accept limitations." He pulled up data on his computer, showing the test flights that had led to the Pathfinder's success. "Look at our early experiments. They failed repeatedly. By your standards, we should have abandoned this approach after the first dozen failures. But Dr. Park convinced the team to keep trying, keep adjusting." Rakil moved closer to the screen, his crystalline body reflecting the light of the displays. These energy signatures, they're harmonizing with background quantum fluctuations. I've never seen anything like it. We call it cosmic surfing, Sang said with a smile. One of our younger physicists came up with the term, and it stuck. The Arcturian was silent for a long moment, absorbing the information. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. Our academies will need to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about propulsion theory. Not everything, Sang assured him. Your technologies work well for what they were designed to do. The Pathfinder simply offers a new approach for long-distance travel. You understand what this means for the galactic balance of power, Rakil said, not a question but a statement. Sang nodded. He understood perfectly. Earth had gone from being a minor player to potentially the most important world in the galaxy overnight. Species that had looked down on humans were now desperate to understand their technology. We're establishing joint research teams, he told the Arcturian. Scientists from all council races working alongside humans to explore the full potential of this technology. Your insights will be valuable. You understand aspects of quantum physics that we're still learning. Rakil's body shifted to a deep purple, a color Sang hadn't seen before. You're willing to share this knowledge, after how humans have been treated. Sang smiled. That's another thing about humans. We can be surprisingly forgiving. He didn't add the other part, that humans could also hold grudges. The council races would find that Earth remembered every dismissive comment, every rejected proposal, every patronizing lecture. The first joint session begins tomorrow, Sang said, standing to indicate the meeting was ending. I hope you'll join us. As the Arcturian left, Sang looked at the line of aliens still waiting in the hallway. The galaxy was changing, and humans were leading that change. What Dr. Park had started with a simple question, why fight against the universe when you could dance with it, was becoming a revolution that would reshape civilizations. And it had all begun because humans refused to accept that something was impossible. Captain Lee stood in the massive training hall of the Interspecies Navigation Institute, watching as 20 pilots from 12 different species practiced on the Pathfinder simulators. Just 6 months ago, she had been considered a reckless dreamer. Now she was teaching the galaxy's finest pilots how to surf the cosmos. The key is not to force it, she explained, walking between the simulation pods. You must feel the quantum currents, not fight against them. A frustrated Dralaxian pilot emerged from his pod, his forearms gesturing wildly. It makes no sense. The controls respond differently each time. Lee nodded patiently. Because space itself is always changing. The drive doesn't follow a fixed path. It adapts to the universe as it exists in that moment. That's why we say you must dance with space, not march through it. The concept was particularly difficult for species with rigid hierarchical thinking. They wanted clear rules, fixed procedures. The human approach required flexibility and intuition along with technical skill. Across the room, her former navigator Jin was working with a young Arcturian pilot who showed unusual promise. The crystalline being had adapted to the human way of thinking faster than others of his kind. You're getting it, Jin encouraged as the Arcturian successfully completed a simulated jump. You stopped trying to control everything and started feeling the flow. Lee smiled as she watched the training sessions. The Institute had been her idea, a place where all species could learn this new way of traveling together. Some council members had argued that humans should keep the technology to themselves, using it as leverage after centuries of being treated as inferiors. Ambassador Choi had rejected that idea firmly. We will not become what we disliked in others, she had said. Lee's communication band buzzed with a message. The final preparations for tomorrow's historic mission were complete. 5 ships, built with the new drive system, would depart on the first cooperative journey beyond the galactic rim. Each would be crewed by members of multiple species, working together. Lee had been offered command of the flagship but had declined. Her place was here, teaching others. Instead, the mission would be led by Captain Park, the son of the brilliant scientist whose theories had changed everything. As the training session ended, Lee walked to the large viewing window overlooking Earth. The Galactic Council's diplomatic headquarters now orbited the planet, a sign of humanity's new status. Ships from across the galaxy filled Earth's orbital space, bringing diplomats, scientists, and entrepreneurs eager to work with humans. "It's quite a view, isn't it?" said a familiar voice behind her. Lee turned to see Ambassador Choi, elegant as always in her formal diplomatic attire. Around her neck hung the Stellar Medallion, the Council's highest honor, awarded to her just yesterday in a ceremony watched by billions across the galaxy. "Madam Ambassador," Lee greeted her with a respectful bow. "Congratulations on your award." Choi waved away the formality. "The award belongs to all of us, especially you and your crew. The risk you took was worth it," Lee finished for her. "Though I'm not sure we fully understood how much would change." They both looked out at the busy orbital lanes. 6 months ago, most alien ships avoided Earth space entirely. Humans had been seen as barely worth noticing, a young species still finding their place. Now Earth was the center of the greatest technological revolution in 10,000 years. "The council session today was interesting," Choi said after a moment. "They've approved funding for 50 more ships with a new drive system. Construction will be shared across all member worlds. And humans will train the crews," Lee added. "It still feels strange, teaching beings who have traveled space since before our ancestors invented the wheel." They need us now," Choi said simply. "Our perspective, our willingness to try the impossible." A soft chime sounded, indicating the arrival of a ship at the Institute's docking bay. That would be Dr. Sang, bringing the final training modifications for tomorrow's mission. The brilliant physicist had become the face of human scientific innovation, explaining complex theories in ways other species could understand. "Do you ever wonder what Dr. Park would think of all this?" Lee asked suddenly. The scientist had died just weeks before the Pathfinder's maiden voyage, never seeing his theories proven correct. "I think he would be pleased," Choi replied. "Not because humanity has gained status, but because his work has brought species together who barely spoke to each other before." Lee nodded, thinking of the crews preparing for tomorrow's mission. Races that had been rivals for millennia would travel together into the unknown, united by human innovation. "There's something I haven't told anyone yet," Choi said quietly. "The Council has approved my proposal for an intergalactic exploration program. Once the Galactic Rim mission succeeds, we'll begin planning jumps to neighboring galaxies." Lee turned to her in surprise. "Neighboring galaxies? Even with our drive, that's millions of light years." "The theoretical team believes it's possible," Choi replied with a small smile. "Dr. Sang says the principles are the same, just a bigger wave to surf." The thought was both exciting and terrifying. Humanity hadn't just changed travel within the galaxy, they had opened up the entire universe. As if reading her thoughts, Choi added, "The Council insisted on one condition. Every intergalactic mission must include human crew members. It seems they finally recognized that our perspective has value." Lee laughed softly. It only took breaking the laws of physics as they understood them. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching Earth rotate slowly below them. The blue planet now held a place in galactic affairs that no one could have imagined a year ago. Tomorrow, the 5 ships would depart on their historic journey beyond the Galactic Rim. Next year, perhaps, the first intergalactic missions would begin. The universe had suddenly become much smaller and infinitely more accessible. "Not bad for a backwater species," Choi said with a rare grin. "Not bad at all," Lee agreed. As new trainees began filing into the simulation hall for the evening session, Lee took one last look at her home planet. Humans had always looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. Now those stars, all stars, everywhere, were within their grasp. The end.